Everyone in the room thought it was a joke. The kind of joke professors make when they want to remind everyone who's on top. The kind that gets polite laughter and then disappears into the air. But this one didn't disappear. Because the person being laughed at didn't laugh back. He stepped forward instead. And within minutes, the room that had been buzzing with confidence fell completely silent. This is the story of a challenge no one was supposed to solve, and the quiet man everyone overlooked who did. It was a cold Thursday evening in late November at the Massachusetts Institute of Advanced Technology, known among academics simply as MIAT. The campus was nearly empty. Most students had already gone home for the night, but one lecture hall in the mathematics building was still brightly lit. Inside, the weekly open problem seminar was wrapping up. This wasn't a class. There were no grades. No undergraduates. No beginners. Only professors, postdoctoral researchers, and a handful of elite graduate students, people who lived and breathed mathematics. Leading the session was Dr. Victor Langford. 58 years old. Internationally respected. Published. Decorated. Feared. Dr. Langford was known for two things, his brilliance and his ego. He believed hierarchy mattered. That credentials mattered. That some minds were simply built higher than others. And tonight, he was in rare form. As the seminar ended, Dr. Langford turned back to the whiteboard and began writing one final problem. It wasn't a famous theorem. Not something you'd find in textbooks. But among specialists, it was notorious. A specific, deeply stubborn conjecture related to number distributions, an edge case that had resisted clean solutions for decades. Not impossible. Just humiliatingly difficult. When he finished, he circled part of the equation and read and stepped back. If anyone here, he said casually, can resolve this special case tonight, I'll personally give you $10,000. A few people laughed. Others shook their heads. Someone muttered, not a chance. Dr. Langford smiled. He enjoyed moments like this. That's when the door opened. A cleaning cart rolled quietly into the room. Pushing it was Jamal Rivera. 42 years old. Night shift maintenance. Gray uniform. Work gloves tucked into his back pocket. Headphones around his neck. Everyone in the room had seen him before. He cleaned this building every night. He was polite. Quiet. Invisible. Jamal stopped just inside the doorway, waiting for the group to clear out so he could do his job. Dr. Langford noticed him. And something about the moment, maybe the audience, maybe the adrenaline, pushed him to say something he hadn't planned. He pointed at the board and said, half smiling, Jamal, if you can solve that, the offer applies to you too. The room laughed. Not cruel laughter. But not respectful either. The kind that assumes the outcome before it happens. Jamal smiled politely. He was used to that tone. He nodded once, then looked at the board. And froze. Because he'd seen something like this before. Not exactly this. But close enough to make his pulse quicken. Jamal had loved numbers since he was a child growing up in the Bronx. Patterns made sense to him when people didn't. He'd earned a full scholarship to study mathematics years earlier, but life had interfered. His mother got sick. Bills piled up. Dreams became optional. So he worked. But he never stopped learning. At night, after his shifts, Jamal stayed behind in empty classrooms. He copied equations from discarded notes. Read research papers printed at the public library. Watched recorded lectures online. And sometimes, he played. He'd take unfinished problems left on boards and explore them quietly, no pressure, no audience, no expectations. He wasn't trying to prove anything. He just liked understanding. And now, standing there with a mop bucket behind him, he recognized something. Not a solution. But a door. Jamal took off his headphones. Professor, he said calmly, may I try something? The laughter slowed. Dr. Langford raised an eyebrow. Then shrugged. Of course. Why not? Jamal walked to the board. Picked up the marker. And began writing. At first, the room barely paid attention. But then someone leaned forward. Then another. Jamal wasn't rushing. He rewrote part of the equation, not changing it, but reframing it. He introduced a transformation that looked simple, almost obvious. But no one had used it this way before. He applied a lesser-known inequality, not as a tool, but as a lens. Then he made a substitution that made several impossible terms collapse into symmetry. A graduate student whispered, "Wait, what is he doing?" A postdoc stood up. Dr. Langford's smile faded. The room was silent now except for the sound of the marker. Step by step, the problem softened. Not brute force. Elegance. When Jamal stepped back and wrote QED, no one clapped. They stared. A senior professor broke the silence. "Can you explain that last step?" Jamal nodded. He did. Slowly. Clearly. And that's when the realization hit. This wasn't a trick. It wasn't luck. It was correct. Someone whispered, "He resolved the obstruction." Another said, "That actually works." Dr. Langford felt his stomach drop. He checked the logic. Then checked it again. And finally, quietly, said, "It holds." The room erupted. Not laughter. Applause. Phones came out. Photos of the board were taken. Jamal stepped away, suddenly aware of where he was. "I didn't mean to interrupt," he said. "I just saw something." Dr. Langford stood frozen. The next morning, the images were everywhere. Academic forums. Private Slack groups. Research emails. Experts confirmed it. The special case was resolved. Not the entire conjecture, but a barrier everyone had accepted as immovable. And Jamal's method opened a path forward. By noon, the story had escaped the department. By evening, it was on the news. Night maintenance worker solves long-standing mathematical problem. Dr. Langford kept his word. In front of witnesses, he handed Jamal a check for $10,000. But the check wasn't the real reward. MIAT offered Jamal full academic sponsorship. Research fellows asked to collaborate. A mathematics journal requested a formal submission. The technique gained a name. The Rivera transformation. Jamal enrolled officially the following semester. He studied during the day. Worked nights a little longer, by choice. "To finish what I started," he said. He mentored students who felt invisible. Started a scholarship fund for working adults with academic talent. And when he spoke at commencement years later, he said something the audience never forgot. "Genius doesn't announce itself. It waits." Dr. Langford changed too. He spoke openly about the moment. About arrogance. About assumptions. "The most brilliant insight I witnessed," he said once, "came from the person I almost didn't notice." Years later, at an international conference, Jamal received a standing ovation. Dr. Langford, retired now, clapped the longest. Because that night wasn't about $10,000. It was about who we overlook. And what we miss when we do. What would you have done in that room? And how many brilliant minds do we walk past every day without seeing? If this story moved you, share it. And remember, your mind doesn't need permission to matter. Thanks for watching.